The sound of shattering glass cut through the ambient chatter of the small café, turning every head in the room, including Garrett Quinn's. He looked up from wiping down the counter to see his 7-year-old daughter Emma frozen in place, her eyes wide with horror at the broken water pitcher at her feet. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she whispered, her bottom lip quivering. Garrett immediately moved from behind the counter, grabbing a rag and the dustpan. "It's okay, sweetie. Accidents happen." He knelt down beside her, giving her a reassuring smile. "Why don't you go sit at our table and finish your homework? I'll clean this up." Emma nodded, carefully stepping around the glass shards in her worn sneakers. Garrett watched her go, his heart aching. She was trying so hard to help out at the cafe after school, despite being exhausted from a full day of second grade. Ever since Melissa had left them 3 years ago, it had been just the two of them against the world. The Café Quinn's corner was barely staying afloat. He'd poured his life savings into it after being laid off from his corporate job, hoping to build something stable for Emma. Now, he was working 16-hour days just to make rent on both the cafe space and their small apartment above it. As he swept up the glass, the bell above the door chimed. Garrett glanced up to see a woman he'd never seen before walk in. She was striking tall with auburn hair pulled into a casual ponytail, wearing simple jeans and a white blouse that somehow looked expensive. She carried a sleek laptop bag and had an air of quiet confidence that immediately drew his attention. The woman chose a corner table by the window, away from the other patrons. Garrett finished cleaning up the glass, checked on Emma, who was now deeply focused on her math homework, and made his way to the new customer. "Welcome to Quinn's Corner," he said, offering his most genuine smile. "What can I get for you today?" The woman looked up, and Garrett was struck by her amber eyes, warm and intelligent. "Just a black coffee and whatever pastry you recommend," she said, returning his smile. "I've been in meetings all day and need something sweet to compensate." "The apple turnover is fresh out of the oven," Garrett suggested. "My daughter says they taste like cinnamon hugs." The woman laughed, a rich sound that seemed to brighten the cafe. "Cinnamon hugs it is, then." "Coming right up," Garrett said, making his way back to the counter. As he prepared her order, he found his eyes drifting back to her. She had opened her laptop but wasn't typing, instead staring out the window with a pensive expression. When he brought her coffee and turnover, she thanked him with another smile that made something in his chest tighten. "I'm Garrett, by the way, Garrett Quinn. Owner, barista, and occasional mop technician. Amelia Morgan," she replied, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, her skin soft. "This place has a wonderful atmosphere. How long have you owned it?" "Almost 2 years now," Garrett answered, running a hand through his dark hair. "It's been a journey." "The best things usually are," Amelia said, her eyes twinkling. Their conversation was interrupted by Emma, who had bounded over with her math worksheet. "Daddy, I finished. Can you check it?" Garrett introduced Emma to Amelia, who greeted the little girl with genuine interest, asking about her school and favorite subjects. Emma, usually shy around strangers, took to Amelia immediately, proudly showing her the A's she'd received on her spelling test. "You must be very proud," Amelia said to Garrett. "Every single day," he replied, the love evident in his voice. For the next week, Amelia became a regular at Quinn's Corner, always choosing the same table by the window. She would work on her laptop for hours, occasionally taking phone calls that she stepped outside for. Garrett found himself looking forward to her visits, their conversations growing longer and more personal with each day. He learned she was new to town, having recently relocated for work. She was vague about what exactly she did. Consulting was all she would say, but her knowledge seemed to span various industries. She was well-traveled, thoughtful, and had a way of listening that made Garrett feel truly heard for the first time in years. Emma adored her, especially after Amelia spent an entire afternoon helping her build a model solar system for science class. Watching them together, heads bent over styrofoam balls and paint, Garrett felt a dangerous warmth spreading through him, a feeling he'd sworn off after Melissa had declared family life too constraining and walked out. On Friday evening, as Garrett was preparing to close, the cafe door swung open with force. A tall man in an expensive suit strode in, his eyes immediately landing on Amelia, who was still sitting at her usual table. "There you are," the man said loudly, approaching her. "I've been trying to reach you all day. We need to finalize the Palmer deal tonight." Amelia's posture stiffened. "I told you I needed time to consider the terms, Richard." "There's nothing to consider," Richard insisted, his voice rising. "It's 30 million. Who needs to think about that?" Garrett froze behind the counter. 30 million? What kind of consulting involved that kind of money? "I'm not discussing this here," Amelia said firmly, closing her laptop. Richard leaned in closer, his hand gripping the edge of her table. "You can't keep hiding in this. Quaint little establishment, pretending you're just like these people. You have responsibilities." Amelia's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she noticed other patrons beginning to stare. Garrett couldn't stand by any longer. He moved quickly from behind the counter, positioning himself between Richard and Amelia's table. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or take this conversation elsewhere," Garrett said calmly but firmly. "You're disturbing my customers." Richard looked Garrett up and down with undisguised contempt. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to, or who she is for that matter?" "I know you're being disrespectful in my café," Garrett replied, his jaw tight. "That's all I need to know." Richard laughed derisively. "Your café. This place probably doesn't make in a month what she spends on lunch." "Richard, that's enough," Amelia interjected, standing up. "I'll speak with you tomorrow at the office." "No, you'll speak with me now," Richard insisted, reaching for her arm. In one fluid motion, Garrett stepped between them, his hand gently but firmly pushing Richard's arm away. "The lady said tomorrow. Now I'm asking you politely to leave." Richard's face contorted with anger. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Dad." Emma's small voice came from near the counter where she had been arranging cookies on a display plate. Her eyes were wide with concern. The sound of his daughter's voice centered Garrett. He squared his shoulders, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "My daughter is watching, so I'm going to stay calm, but you need to leave. Now." Something in Garrett's expression must have conveyed his seriousness because Richard took a step back. "This isn't over," he said to Amelia before turning and storming out of the café. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Garrett turned to Amelia, who looked mortified. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "I'm so sorry about that," she said, gathering her things. "Richard is. He's a colleague who doesn't understand boundaries. I should go." "You don't have to," Garrett said, surprising himself with how much he wanted her to stay. Amelia hesitated, then shook her head. "I think I do. Thank you for stepping in. You didn't have to do that." Before Garrett could respond, she had hurried out the door, leaving him standing there with questions swirling in his mind. Amelia didn't return to the café the next day, or the day after. By the third day of her absence, Garrett had to admit to himself how much he missed her presence. Emma asked about her constantly, wondering when Miss Amelia would come back to help her with the book report she'd promised to look over. On the fourth day, just as Garrett was losing hope, the bell above the door chimed and Amelia walked in. She looked different, more formal in a tailored blazer and slacks, her hair swept up in an elegant twist. "Amelia," Emma exclaimed, running to greet her with a hug that Amelia returned warmly. "I've missed you, sweetheart," Amelia said, her eyes finding Garrett's over Emma's head. Garrett felt rooted to the spot, relief and something deeper washing over him. "Coffee," he offered with a tentative smile. "Actually," Amelia said, approaching the counter, "I was hoping to talk to you. Do you have a moment?" Garrett glanced around the nearly empty café, then nodded to his only employee, a college student named Tyler. "Can you watch things for a bit?" They sat at a table in the back, away from the windows. For a moment, neither spoke. "I owe you an explanation," Amelia finally said. "And an apology for disappearing like that." "You don't owe me anything," Garrett replied, though he desperately wanted to understand. Amelia took a deep breath. "I haven't been entirely honest about who I am. I'm not just a consultant. I'm the CEO of Morgan Innovations." Garrett's eyebrows shot up. Morgan Innovations was a major tech company, one of the largest employers in the region. He'd applied for a job there after being laid off, before deciding to open the café. "The company was my father's," Amelia continued. "When he passed away last year, I took over. It's been overwhelming. I came to your cafe that first day because I needed to escape the pressures of the office just for an hour. But then I kept coming back because being here, talking with you and Emma, it made me feel normal again." Garrett processed this information, pieces falling into place. The vague meetings, the important phone calls, Richard's comment about $30 million. "So you're," he began. "Wealthy, yes," Amelia admitted. "But that's not who I am, at least it's not all I am." Richard thinks money is everything, that the Palmer acquisition is all that matters. But sitting here, watching you with Emma, seeing how you've built this place with love and hard work, it reminded me of what my father always said. That success isn't measured by your bank account, but by the lives you touch. Garrett studied her face, searching for any sign of condescension or pity. He found none, only sincerity and a vulnerability that touched him. "Why tell me now?" he asked quietly. Amelia's gaze dropped to her hands. "Because I care about you and Emma. Because I've spent the last 4 days missing this place, missing you both, and realizing that the happiest I've been in the past year has been sitting at that window table, drinking your coffee and watching you be an incredible father." Garrett's heart hammered in his chest. "I missed you too," he admitted. "Emma kept asking when you'd be back. She wasn't the only one wondering." A smile bloomed across Amelia's face, tentative but hopeful. "I'd like to keep coming back if that's okay." "Just as me, not as the CEO of Morgan Innovations, just Amelia." "I'd like that," Garrett said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Just so we're clear, I don't care about your money. I care about the woman who spent 3 hours helping my daughter paint Neptune the right shade of blue." Amelia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "That's exactly why I came back." Over the next few weeks, their relationship deepened. Amelia continued to visit the cafe, sometimes working from her corner table, other times helping Emma with homework or assisting Garrett during the afternoon rush. She never mentioned her wealth or position, and Garrett never asked about it. Instead, they talked about their dreams, their childhoods, their fears. Amelia confessed her insecurities about living up to her father's legacy at the company. Garrett shared his struggles as a single parent, his determination to give Emma stability despite their financial challenges. Their first official date was simple, a picnic in the park, after Garrett closed the cafe early one Thursday. Emma was having a sleepover at her friend's house, giving them rare time alone. They sat on a blanket under an oak tree, eating sandwiches Garrett had prepared and talking until the stars came out. "I haven't done this in years," Amelia admitted, lying back to gaze at the night sky. "Just existed without an agenda." Garrett lay beside her, their shoulders touching. "I know what you mean. Between the cafe and Emma, there's not much time for stargazing." Amelia turned her head to look at him, her expression serious. "You're an amazing father, Garrett. The way you've created this life for Emma, despite everything, it's remarkable." "We get by," he said, uncomfortable with the praise. "No," Amelia insisted, propping herself up on one elbow. "You do so much more than get by. You're building a home, a business, a life, all while making sure Emma never feels the absence of her mother. Do you know how rare that is?" Garrett was silent for a moment, emotion thick in his throat. "I'm terrified of failing her," he finally admitted. "The cafe isn't doing well. I've been putting off repairs, stretching every dollar. Some nights after Emma's asleep, I sit with the books and wonder how much longer we can keep going." Amelia reached out, her hand gentle on his cheek. "You won't fail her, you're too stubborn." Her smile was soft in the moonlight. "And you're not alone anymore." Before Garrett could respond, she leaned in and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "I've wanted to do that since the day you stood up to Richard," she confessed. Garrett grinned. "I've wanted to do that since you ordered a cinnamon hug." They laughed together, the sound carrying into the night air, and when Garrett pulled her close for another kiss, it felt like coming home. The following Sunday, Amelia invited Garrett and Emma to her house for dinner. Garrett had imagined something modest, perhaps a small suburban home or a downtown apartment. What he hadn't expected was the sprawling property on the outskirts of town, complete with manicured gardens and a view of the mountains. "Wow," Emma breathed as they pulled up the long driveway in Garrett's aging sedan. "Miss Amelia lives in a castle." Garrett swallowed hard. suddenly aware of how out of place they might look him in his nicest, but well-worn button-down shirt. Emma in her Sunday dress that was slightly too short after her recent growth spurt. Amelia met them at the door, casually dressed in jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She greeted Emma with a hug and Garrett with a quick kiss, seemingly oblivious to his discomfort. "I'm so glad you're here," she said, leading them inside. "I've been cooking all afternoon, though I should warn you I'm much better at running a company than making lasagna." The house was beautiful but surprisingly homey, filled with books and family photographs, comfortable furniture, and artwork that looked chosen with care rather than for status. Garrett began to relax as Amelia gave them a tour, her hand warm in his. Emma was enchanted by the library with its rolling ladder and floor-to-ceiling shelves. "You have more books than our school," she exclaimed, running her fingers reverently along the spines. "You can borrow any of them you'd like," Amelia told her. "My father believed books were meant to be read, not just displayed." They ended up in the kitchen, where Emma helped Amelia toss the salad while Garrett opened the wine Amelia had selected. The domesticity of the scene wasn't lost on him how natural it felt to be here with her. How easily Emma had adapted to Amelia's presence in their lives. During dinner, Emma regaled Amelia with stories from school, particularly about the upcoming science fair where she planned to demonstrate how different liquids freeze at different rates. "That sounds fascinating," Amelia said. "You know, my company has a research lab with some pretty amazing equipment. If your dad agrees, maybe we could visit someday and you could see how scientists test things like that." Emma's eyes went wide. "You have real scientists working for you?" Amelia nodded. "Some of the best in the world." Garrett watched this exchange with a mixture of gratitude and unease. Amelia's offer was generous, but it highlighted the vast difference in their circumstances. What could he possibly offer her that she didn't already have? After dinner, while Emma explored the garden with strict instructions to stay within sight of the kitchen windows, Garrett helped Amelia clear the table. "You're quiet," she observed, loading dishes into the dishwasher. Garrett sighed, setting down the glasses he was carrying. "I'm just processing. This house, your company, your life, it's a lot to take in." Amelia straightened, concern in her eyes. "Does it bother you?" "Not in the way you might think," Garrett explained. "I'm not intimidated by your success. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. It's just, what do I have to offer someone like you? You live in this beautiful home, run a massive company, could have anyone you wanted." "I want you," Amelia said simply. "The man who works 16 hours a day to keep his business afloat and still has energy to help his daughter with homework. The man who defended me against Richard without knowing or caring who I was. The man who makes me laugh and makes me feel like just Amelia, not the Morgan heiress or the CEO." She stepped closer, taking his hands in hers. "My whole life, people have wanted me for what I could give them: money, connections, status. You didn't even know who I was, and you gave me coffee and conversation and a place to belong." Garrett looked into her eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity. "I'm falling in love with you," he admitted, the words escaping before he could reconsider. Amelia's smile was radiant. "I'm already there." Their kiss was deeper this time, full of promise and longing, interrupted only by Emma's return from the garden with a handful of wildflowers she'd found growing near the fence. The weeks turned into months, and Amelia became a fixture in their lives. She was there for Emma's science fair, where her freezing experiment won second place, for movie nights in Garrett's small apartment above the café, for quiet evenings after Emma went to bed when they would talk about everything and nothing. The café continued to struggle, despite Garrett's best efforts. One afternoon, he received notice that the building's owner was raising the rent by 30%, an amount he simply couldn't afford. Amelia found him sitting at one of the café tables after closing, surrounded by papers, his head in his hands. "What's wrong?" she asked, sliding into the chair beside him. Garrett explained the situation, frustration evident in his voice. "I've put everything into this place. If I lose it, I lose our home too. Emma's finally settled after everything with Melissa. I can't uproot her again." Amelia was quiet for a moment, thinking, "What if I helped? I could." "No," Garrett interrupted firmly. "I'm not taking your money, Amelia. That's not what this relationship is about." I know that, she said, hurt flashing in her eyes. But people who love each other help each other. It wouldn't be charity. It would feel like it to me, Garrett insisted. I need to fix this my way. Amelia nodded slowly, respecting his decision though clearly unhappy with it. Okay. But promise you'll tell me if there's any other way I can help. Over the next week, Garrett explored every option: bank loans, cutting costs, even considering moving to a smaller location. Nothing seemed viable without significantly impacting Emma's stability or the quality of the café that his loyal customers had come to expect. Then, one evening, Amelia arrived at the café just before closing with an excited expression. I have an idea, she said without preamble. And before you say no, please hear me out completely. Garrett raised an eyebrow but gestured for her to continue. Morgan Innovations is opening a new research facility on the edge of town, she explained. We need a café in the building, somewhere our employees can get good coffee and food without leaving the campus. The current plan is to contract with a national chain, but what if it was Quinn's Corner instead? Garrett stared at her. You want me to move the café to your building? Not move, expand, Amelia clarified. You'd keep this location and open a second one in our facility. We'd pay all the build-out costs, and you'd have a guaranteed customer base of over 300 employees. The contract would more than cover the rent increase here. Garrett considered this, turning the idea over in his mind. You're not just offering this because of us, are you? Amelia shook her head. From a business perspective, it makes perfect sense. Your coffee is better than any chain, and my employees would love your food. It's a win-win. Our relationship is just what made me think of the connection. It was a good solution, one that allowed him to save the original café while growing the business on his own terms. After reviewing the details and confirming it was a legitimate business proposition rather than a charitable gesture, Garrett agreed. The expansion was a success. Within 3 months, Quinn's Corner had doubled its revenue, allowing Garrett to hire more staff, pay off old debts, and even set aside money for Emma's college fund. He split his time between the two locations, overseeing operations while maintaining the personal touch that made the café special. One evening, nearly a year after they'd first met, Garrett invited Amelia to the original café for dinner after closing. Emma was spending the night with a friend, giving them rare privacy. Garrett had transformed the space, setting up a single table with candles, flowers, and fine china he'd borrowed from one of his regular customers. He'd spent the day preparing a gourmet meal, channeling skills from his college days working in restaurants to pay tuition. What's all this? Amelia asked, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. Our anniversary, Garrett explained, pulling out her chair. 1 year ago today, you walked into my café and ordered a cinnamon hug. Amelia's smile was luminous. I can't believe you remembered the exact date. It was the day my life changed, Garrett said simply. They enjoyed the meal, reminiscing about their first impressions of each other, laughing at the memory of Richard's unceremonious ejection from the café, marveling at how far they'd come. After dessert apple turnovers, of course Garrett reached across the table for Amelia's hand. This past year has been the best of my life, he said, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his stomach. You've brought so much joy to Emma and me. You've shown me that it's possible to find love again, to trust again. Amelia squeezed his hand, her eyes shining. You've given me something I never knew I needed, a sense of belonging, of family. I've never been happier. Garrett took a deep breath and stood, moving to kneel beside her chair. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. I know it hasn't been that long, he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. And I know our lives are very different, but I love you, Amelia Morgan. Emma loves you. We want you to be part of our family officially. Tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks as she nodded, too overcome to speak. Is that a yes? Garrett asked, his heart pounding. Yes, Amelia managed, throwing her arms around his neck. 1,000 times yes. 5 years later, Quinn's Corner had expanded to 5 locations throughout the city, becoming known for its exceptional coffee, homemade pastries, and warm atmosphere. Garrett oversaw the business operations, while still finding time to work behind the counter at the original café several days a week, maintaining the personal connections with regular customers that had made the place special from the beginning. Amelia continued as CEO of Morgan Innovations, though she'd restructured the company to allow for more family time. Their home, a comfortable house halfway between Amelia's original property and the café, was filled with laughter, books, and the constant energy of children. Emma, now 12, had blossomed into a confident young scientist, encouraged by both Garrett and Amelia. She had been joined by a 3-year-old brother, James, who had Garrett's dark hair and Amelia's amber eyes, and a new baby sister, Lily, just 6 months old. On Sunday mornings, the family tradition was breakfast at the original café before it opened to the public. Emma would help her father prepare the pastries for the day while Amelia bounced James on her hip, Lily sleeping peacefully in her carrier. "Do you remember when Dad protected you from that mean man?" Emma asked Amelia one such morning as she carefully arranged cinnamon rolls on a baking sheet. "The one who was yelling about millions of dollars." Garrett and Amelia exchanged amused glances. "I certainly do," Amelia replied, setting James up with crayons and paper at a nearby table. "That was the moment I knew your dad was special. Because he was brave," Emma asked. "Because he didn't care who I was or how much money I had," Amelia explained. "He just saw someone who needed help." Garrett slipped his arm around his wife's waist, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I saw the woman I was going to fall in love with. I just didn't know it yet. And I saw a man who put his daughter and his principles above everything else," Amelia said, leaning into his embrace. "I didn't stand a chance." "I'm glad you didn't," Garrett murmured. As they prepared for another day at Quinn's Corner, surrounded by the family they'd built together, both knew that the greatest wealth wasn't measured in dollars or buildings or business success, but in the love that had begun with a broken water pitcher, a cinnamon hug, and the courage to protect a stranger who would become the center of their world.